Chapter 721, Klein's Guidance. On the future, Frank Lee rolled up his sleeves and began flicking his fountain pen while writing with a smile.
My dear friend, Gammon Sparrow, I have good news for you. I have successfully cultivated a new breed of mushrooms. By using the flesh and blood of a rose bishop, as long as there's fish, it will keep growing. We'll no longer have to worry about not being able to eat mushrooms due to long voyages. Furthermore, it has been crossbred with beef, making it taste excellent. Its only flaw is that there's no way to make it catch fish by itself. External help is needed, but I don't think it's too big a problem. After all, based on what Nina said, it wouldn't corrupt the ocean. Well, let's just pretend she's right. I've mailed you some dried mushrooms. As long as you give it water and fish, they will immediately become normal and reproduce by themselves. I hope you will like my gift.
After going on and on, Frank finally folded the letter and placed it in an envelope. He stuffed 3 dried mushrooms into it before applying glue and sealing it. After doing all of this, he took out the note Klein had given him, followed the description written, and began to seriously prepare the ritual needed to summon the messenger. This wasn't complicated for Frank, so it didn't take long for him to set up the altar and create a wall of spirituality. Finally, he solemnly placed a Lowen gold coin before the candle. He lit the candle, softly chanted the incantation, and stared at the flame. He watched it burgeon as a headless woman walked out with 4 heads in hand. Frank first jumped in fright before staring at Renette Tinneker's 4 beautiful, blonde, red-eyed heads that looked identical with patience as he muttered,
How was it done? Why are they completely identical? If planted in soil, will more be grown?
The eyes of the 4 heads held by Renette Tinneker turned in different directions before uniformly falling on Frank Lee's face. Suddenly, the soil stored inside all kinds of vessels within the room flew out and piled before Frank. Following that, Frank floated up as he tumbled in midair with a shocked expression. He was thrown straight into the pile of soil with his head first. His legs kept struggling as they dangled outside, but he was unable to pull himself out of the soil pile anytime soon. Only then did 2 of Renette Tinneker's 4 heads reach out forward, separately biting down on the letter and the gold coin. Only after she completely disappeared did Frank Lee finally find the best spot to exert his strength to escape the soil as he fell to the ground. She's powerful. Frank first sighed with a sense of lingering fear. Following that, he wiped the soil beside his mouth, bit into it, and chewed on it carefully before muttering to himself,
It's a bit sour.
At that moment, Katlia, who had just finished a sacrifice in her cabin, sensed something. Her dark purple eyes subconsciously looked towards Frank Lee's room, and she vaguely saw a crudely made, illusory doll. The doll didn't have a head. The scene flashed as Catalia closed her eyes immediately. She felt her eyes were burning as she couldn't help but have her tears flow out. She knitted brows little by little as she muttered in disbelief.
Ancient Bane?
Pause. After sending the meteorite crystal and black hunting giant lizard's spinal fluid to Miss Magician and Miss Justice, Klein returned to the real world. He lay himself down on a reclining chair. As he allowed his body to rock gently, he began considering where he would head to next.
With news of Gammon Sparrow's sighting and Crazy Captain Connor's victors matter, it's unlikely that the pirates will openly appear in Byam for some time. They've either left the harbors or are hiding themselves, making it difficult for others to find them. That is to say that there's no need for me to stay here. The matters regarding the resistance can be directed by responding to them through Sea God or by going through Danitz. I'll head to the Seaweed Bar later. I'll get a fake identity, buy a scalp ticket, and head for Desi Bay's Conant City. That's not only the biggest harbor around here, but it's also Davy Raymond's hometown. I previously agreed to this Red Glove's request when I released him from creeping hunger that I would pay this beautiful Bay City a visit and tell his daughter that revenge has been exacted. Yes, I'll also think of a way to return the Nightmares Beyonder characteristic to the church. How hypocritical can people be? I'm planning on returning a nightmare characteristic while also planning how to steal a sealed artifact from behind St. Samuel Cathedral's Chainus Gate.
Shaking his head, Klein closed his eyes and slept to recover his spirituality. After an unknown period of time, he suddenly felt something as he opened his eyes naturally. He quickly activated his spirit vision. Then he saw Raynette Tinaker walk out of the void. This messenger was wearing the same complicated black dress, with a letter clasped in one of the head's teeth.
Who mailed it? Danitz, Vice Admiral Iceberg, Frank, or Anderson?
Klein received the letter as he nodded in appreciation.
Thank you.
He was very courteous with his powerful messenger with a mysterious background. He didn't wish to be strangled to death one day.
Do you want to? Immediately. Reply.
Raynette Tinaker's four heads spoke one after another. Klein tore open the envelope, took out the letter, and opened it to read it. The content alarmed him, as he nearly forgot to reply to her. As for Raynette Tinaker, she wasn't quick-tempered. She silently waited by the side.
One day, Frank Lee will destroy the world. He definitely needs to be controlled. I can't give him a chance to advance. Seriously, how much does this fellow love to crossbreed and create all kinds of strange plants? The City of Silver is in need of food.
A thought flashed through Klein's mind as he had a bold idea.
It was to direct Frank's research efforts towards all kinds of food that suited the City of Silver. This way, cows, fish, mushrooms, rose bishops, the sea, and the world would be safe.
Klein hurriedly looked up and said to his messenger,
Yes, I'll immediately reply.
He instantly got up from the reclining chair, walked to the desk, got out a pen and paper, and started writing quickly.
I have a question. If you eat the mushroom breed you create, then eat cooked fish and drink a cup of water, will it continue to reproduce?
After finishing the reminder, Klein proceeded to the main point.
Is it possible for you to create wheat that can grow without sunlight, or cows that can produce milk and meat simply by consuming monsters? That seems rather interesting.
He continued on this topic and wrote a few paragraphs before folding the letter. He then handed it to Raynette Tinaker, and, in a natural way, he said,
The postage will be paid by Frank.
Let's hope. He isn't dead.
After the messenger's four heads said those words one after another, a representative was made to bite on the envelope.
Let's hope he isn't dead.
Klein jumped in fright. Just as he was about to clarify the matter, Raynette Tinaker had already entered the spirit world and disappeared. After contemplating for 2 seconds, Klein wrote a divination statement and used his topaz pendant to confirm that Frank Lee was still alive. He silently heaved a sigh of relief, packed up the dried mushrooms, and rubbed his temples before lying back into the reclining chair, after dinner, at the seaweed bar. Klein wore an ordinary-looking face and came here once again. Unlike before, the customers in the bar were mainly mixed blood or natives who had darker skin and curly black hair. They were either part of the gangs in Byam, or they were secretly working for the resistance, or even both. There weren't many ordinary people, and the commonly seen pirates who often came from different countries were all gone. Only a few people dressed as adventurers were drinking liquor and discussing rumors at sea. Klein swept the bar and found Daniil, who Danitz had mentioned. This thin local could provide him with fake identification documents and scalped ship tickets. Without any apprehension, he went over.
A second-class ticket to Conant for tomorrow, and an identification document.
Daniil looked up and glanced at him. After some thought, he said,
A total of £20.
Just a second-class ticket to Conant costs around £9. However, scalp tickets are more expensive to begin with. Together with the faked identification documents, £20 isn't too ridiculous.
Klein silently did the math before saying,
When can I get it?
In 45 minutes.
Daniil replied like clockwork.
You can pay £5 first, and then pay the rest after receiving the ticket and identification.
All right.
Klein didn't harp on the issue as he took out his wallet and pulled out 5 one-pound notes. He wasn't worried that anyone would target his wallet, for it might mean that he would save the £20 or even get more. Moments after Daniil checked the authenticity of the notes and was about to inform his subordinates to get working, he suddenly realized that the bar was extremely silent. Klein also sensed it as he subconsciously looked towards the door. There were two people there. One was wearing a formal tailcoat and a black trench coat, with brown hair neatly combed backwards. His eyes weren't big, but they were bright and piercing. He had a thin mustache around his mouth, making him exude a gentlemanly feeling while also looking a little sloppy. The other person wore a hooded robe, which was rather rare. His face was hidden in the shadows, making it impossible to identify him. The sloppy gentleman scanned the area and was rather pleased with the crowd's reaction. A silver coin was tumbling in between his fingers as he walked towards Daniil. The hooded person followed behind him, taking out something from his clothes and stuffing it into his mouth, producing crunching sounds. The silver coin stopped moving when the sloppy gentleman came in front of Daniil. He said with a chuckle,
"Prepare 10 tickets to Pritz Harbor tomorrow for me. They need to be split between 3 different ships."
Yes, Mr. Oder.
Daniil stood up in a panic as he replied. Klein momentarily failed to recall who the sloppy gentleman who was tumbling the silver coin in his hand was. Only when he heard the name Oder did he find him familiar. As he was recalling, he saw the man in the hood take out a coffee-colored sweet before popping it into his mouth. He was munching on it, producing the sounds. After obtaining an affirmative reply, Oder and the man didn't stay any longer. They walked to the staircase in the quiet atmosphere, and they headed for the second floor of the bar. Daniil exhaled as he turned his head to see Klein looking puzzled. He then said,
Oder, the adventurer. Oder, who serves the dawn.
I remember. Silver Coin Viper Oder. He's always claimed that he works for Queen Mystic, but no one could prove it. I can ask Ma'am Hermit later. The last I heard of him was at Demir Harbor. He was apparently mixing with Admiral of Blood's intelligence officer, Old Quinn. However, the latter has already been finished off by Mr. Hanged Man.
Klein instantly recalled many things as he deliberated and asked,
What about the other one?
Who knows?
Daniil turned his head to instruct his subordinates as he got them to prepare some identification documents and the corresponding ship tickets. Chapter 722, An Unpeaceful Night. As Silver Coin Viper Oder wasn't a pirate, there were all kinds of rumors about him, most of which could hardly be verified. Klein retracted his gaze from the staircase and walked to the bar counter. He found a seat at the counter and tapped it. "Guy," he said.
A cup of Zarhar.
This was a locally produced malt beer. It was a lot cheaper than Southville beer that needed to be shipped over from the northern continent. Mais, the bartender said.
3 pence.
The bartender recovered from his silent state as he picked up an overturned cup. The crowd in the bar began to break out into whispers as they were illuminated by the gas wall lamps. All of them were discussing the reason for Silver Coin Viper Oder's purchase of 10 tickets. A gang member, male, sleeves rolled up, revealing his tattoo, said,
He's definitely being pursued by someone. 10 tickets among 3 ships. It's clearly to prevent his pursuers from knowing which ship they boarded.
The gang member shared his view based on his experience from evading capture twice. An adventurer, male, drinking Lanty-proof, scoffed.
You don't understand, Oder. If his plan was that simple, he wouldn't have the title Silver Coin Viper. I dare bet that he won't be on any of those liners from those 10 tickets.
Another adventurer said,
The only thing I can confirm is that they're heading to Pritz Harbor.
Another adventurer shook his head when he heard that.
Perhaps the news of him heading to Pritz Harbor is fake as well.
The gang member from before was taken aback by what he heard. Refusing to be one-upped, he said,
According to your descriptions, Oder has likely thought of what you figured out. That's precisely why he's heading to Pritz Harbor and will be on one of the 3 ships.
The 2 adventurers were about to retort him, but they decided that there was quite a non-zero chance of that happening after some careful thought. Momentarily, none of them said a word. This made the gang member extremely happy as he downed the rest of his liquor. Klein was holding a cup of Zarhar as he sipped it while listening to the conversation. He was waiting for the fake identification and tickets he needed.
There's another 45 minutes. I hope nothing happens. Don't make the bar into a mess.
He silently prayed as he drew the crimson moon inwardly. The light yellow beer slowly dropped in volume while Klein would look at the wall clock from time to time, or at the entrance, hoping that time would pass faster. Half an hour later, the door to the bar was suddenly opened with a loud thud as the evening wind gushed in.
No way.
The corners of Klein's lips twitched as he held back his urge to smile wryly. He turned his body to look at the sound. Standing by the door were 5 people. Their leader had black hair and brown eyes, with recessed facial features and cut facial contours. He looked Loanese and looked to be in his early 40s. His expression was cold, and he exuded a natural air of dominance. It made everyone in the bar quieten down without realizing it, and the 3 men and the woman behind him were in trench coats. They didn't hide the fact that they were holding revolvers, and that they would instantly aim and shoot if there was any slight sign of abnormalities.
I don't know them. They aren't on any wanted list or have any bounties on them.
Klein mumbled to himself as he maintained his state as a spectator. The 5 intruders suddenly scattered as they came before different customers, bent their backs slightly, and looked at them before asking,
Where is Silver Coin Viper Odor?
The customers were hesitant to give an answer when they saw the black muzzle pointed at them, along with the handle made of ivory and ebony which exuded a strange sense of beauty under the lights. The customers said they went to the 2nd floor. The customers who had been asked nearly pointed to the staircase in unison.
Someone is really pursuing Odor. This is an act against Queen Mystic, or has Silvercoin Viper done something himself? Or could it be because of the mysterious hooded man beside him who was eating sweets?
Klein drank another mouthful of beer as he saw the intruders send 4 people up to the 2nd floor. One was left behind to continue questioning the customers. Soon the latter grasped the situation of Odor's request to purchase tickets from Daniil. Immediately, the person walked straight to the thin and dark-skinned black marketer, and he asked in a heavy voice, "Tell me honestly, where is Odor heading with those tickets?" Daniil didn't put on a front just because of his social connections. He forced a smile and said,
He didn't make it clear. He requested for 10 tickets that are to be distributed across 3 different ships. The departure date is set for tomorrow, with the destination being Pritz Harbor.
The questioner said, "For real?" The questioner was a seemingly radical man in his 20s.
You can ask anyone here. All of them heard it.
Daniil softly replied, "Dog**T." The man shoved Daniil angrily as he turned to walk towards the other customers. Daniil staggered backward and was about to fall and hit his head onto the side of a tiny circular table when he suddenly felt an additional force on his shoulder. Instantly, he regained his balance. He subconsciously looked over and saw that it was the customer who had just requested to purchase a fake identity and scalp tickets.
Thank you, those bunch of military hyenas.
Daniil first thanked him before softly saying through clenched teeth, the person who had helped him was Klein. He didn't wish for anything to happen to this ticket scalper. After all, he had paid a deposit of £5. Of course, helping the innocent was also a habit of his.
Military hyenas. In Biome, this description often refers to people from MI9. What did Silvercoin Viper Odor do?
Klein silently asked himself as he eliminated the possibility that someone was targeting Queen Mystic. To the low-end military, it was meaningless. As he was thinking, the MI9 members who had headed up to the 2nd floor rushed down. As they ran, they said to their partner,
"He has long fled through the window."
The group of people came and left in a rush. Soon the bar resumed its usual din, but the still gently wobbling main door proved that it wasn't as calm earlier. Klein's wait for his fake identification documents and scalp ticket paid off. He didn't need to worry about any possible interruptions. After paying the remaining £15, he left the seaweed bar, and he returned to the ordinary inn he stayed at.
John Yode. This name is way too simple, isn't it? Before I returned to Backland, I need to make a more realistic identification document.
Klein flipped through the series of identification documents before throwing them inside his suitcase. He took a bath and relaxed, prepared to leave Bayam tomorrow and begin the last stage of his sea travels. At this moment, he heard knocking at the door.
Who is it?
Klein hurriedly took off his bathrobe, wore his clothes and pants, and walked to the door. Outside were a few policemen in black. One of them looked Loanese, while the rest were either mixed bloods or pure natives. Klein asked,
What's the matter?
Mixed-blood policeman said politely, since the gentleman in front of him was apparently a Loanese. Please show us some identification.
Thankfully, I just made one. Otherwise, I'll be spending the night at the police station. Or I'd have to flee on the spot, change my looks, and redo everything.
Klein mumbled as he returned to his room and took out the identification documents. The lone police officer casually flipped through it as he said, Mr. Yode, are you living alone?
Yes, everyone in the inn can vouch for me.
Klein replied frankly. Have you seen this person before? The Loanese police officer revealed a smile and said, As he spoke, a constable beside him unfolded a portrait. On it was an elder who was abnormally thin with white messy hair. Apart from that, nothing stood out.
No.
Klein shook his head. He likes to eat sweets. The Loanese police officer added,
Sweets.
Klein suddenly recalled the mysterious hooded man behind Silver Coin Viper Odor. He had been eating plenty of coffee-colored sweets in a short period of time. After a short deliberation, Klein said without hiding anything,
Perhaps. Back when I was in the seaweed bar, I saw a man who loved eating sweets and was following Silver Coin Viper Odor.
The Loanese officer didn't hide his disappointment. After a simple word of thanks, he ended the questioning. Only after he knocked on the other guest rooms did Klein close the wooden door and return to the reclining chair.
Odor's matter has not only attracted MI9, but it has also gotten the Governor General's office to send manpower to do a city-wide search. This is quite something.
He muttered, and decided to head above the gray fog to browse through the prayer points of light around the sea god's scepter. He could gain more information from the prayers of the believers in Bayam. He didn't wish to end up embroiled in a massive maelstrom for giving the wrong response. After entering the bathroom, he went above the gray fog where he summoned the white bone scepter from the junk pile. Swirling around it were countless points of light. As he browsed through each point of light, he determined that the questioning wasn't on a small scale. The target was Odor and the mysterious man, but he couldn't figure anything else out. After some thought, he cast his gaze on a point of light that had been specially marked out by godhood. It belonged to a mixed-blood policeman named Bulaya. He claimed to have swallowed humiliation by changing his faith to the Lord of Storms for the sea god so as to climb up the police ranks. He was already a superintendent. Then, Klein cast the sea god's will into the corresponding point of light. Bulaya, who was in the police station, assigning work to his subordinates, suddenly broke out into a cold sweat. He hurriedly found an excuse to enter the washroom as he silently prayed.
Blessed of the sea and spirit world, the great Calvetua, your pious believer has something to report to you. The person we are specially searching for tonight is a very thin elder. His hair is completely white, but he has luxuriant hair. It's just very messy. He's very afraid of the cold, and he wears thick clothing even in Bayam. He loves to eat sweets, as though he's a steam engine himself, and sweets are high-quality coal. The higher-ups have informed us to find him but not harm him.
Klein ignored Bulaya and reined his thoughts back as he tapped the side of the long table.
Compared to the portrait, such a description gives me a sense of familiarity. It's like I've heard of it somewhere in the past.
To a seer, a sense of familiarity meant a clue. Hence, Klein wrote a divination statement and began questioning his spirituality. As he chanted the statement, he leaned back into the chair. He fell asleep with the aid of cogitation. In the gray and dark world, Klein found himself back in Backland, back in 15 Minsk Street, which he previously rented. In front of him was the red-eyed Ian. This teenage boy looked up and said,
Turani von Helmosuin, the greatest scientist after Emperor Rosell, a mathematician, a mechanist, and the father of the second-generation difference engine.
Suddenly, Klein woke up and knew who MI9 was looking for. They were finding the great scientist who caused many deaths between the Lowen military and the Intis spy organization solely because of a third-generation difference engine. They were finding the science freak who had mysteriously disappeared for years.
It's no wonder Admiral of Blood's intelligence officer, Old Quinn, had a modified radio transceiver that surpassed those in Backland.
Klein was instantly enlightened. Chapter 723, Another Good Deed Today. After a moment of his mind going adrift, Klein rubbed his temples and slowly composed himself. He discovered that the matter had little to do with him. He wasn't motivated to participate in the matter. He was apathetic to whether the Lowen military found Turani von Helmosuin, because he lacked a sense of belonging to the Lowen kingdom. What he had done in the past was solely to ensure a stable society and that its citizens wouldn't suffer any accidental damage. If possible, he didn't mind instigating a revolution to allow the poor to lead better lives.
I never expected myself to become more of an internationalist after coming to this world.
He gave a self-deprecating laugh as he prepared to return to the real world and have some sleep. Under the cloak of darkness, he would allow the tempest outside to freely unleash its might. At this moment, his attention was caught by the biggest item in the junk pile through the corner of his eyes, the radio transceiver. Speaking of which, what is the faction controlling Turani von Helmosuin? It's nothing much if it's people from Queen Mystic Bernadette's side. She's a strong believer of do as you wish but do no harm, so she wouldn't do anything overboard. It wouldn't be good if it's the Rose school of thought represented by Admiral of Blood. Ignoring the Temperance faction that's being suppressed, as believers of the Chained God or Mother Tree of Desire, their level of vileness can't be lower than the Aurora Order. Letting them grasp the most advanced technology available might bring about a disaster. Klein stopped his actions of wrapping his body with his spirituality. He gently tapped the edge of the modeled table. He soon had an idea, which was to bring the radio transceiver back to the real world, adjust it to the correct frequency to see if he could receive the telegrams from Admiral of Blood's crew. Then he could use the code book he had to decipher the communications. There will be a huge sweep of the city tonight. The matter must be at a rather important and intricate point. If the ones controlling Helmosuin are them, there's a possibility of the appearance of crucial telegram exchanges. In a situation in which the Governor General's office, the Lowen military, and the Church of Storms haven't placed importance or even accepted this technology, this is the safest method. Therefore, Admiral of Blood and Company have a non-zero chance that they wouldn't change the frequency and codes after Old Quinn's death.
Anyway, I'll just give it a try.
After some deliberation, Klein didn't delay as he returned to the real world and busily prepared a bestowment ritual. After bringing the radio transceiver into his room, he didn't immediately use it. Instead, he used a ritual dagger and created a wall of spirituality to seal the room. He was doing it to air out the gray fog smell.
To him, there was actually no need to go through so much trouble to confirm the faction that controlled Helmosuin. He could have used the gray fog's aura to contact Erodes and receive the answer. But the problem was that he had posed his questions recently, and the smell that frequently appeared might incur the notice of evil gods like the true creator or the primordial demoness. It was extremely dangerous. Therefore, Klein decided to play safe by relying on himself.
After about 8 minutes, when the airing was almost complete, he dispelled the wall of spirituality and controlled the radio transceiver to begin his surveillance. After an unknown period of time, the corresponding frequency received a transmission. Klein held back the joy in his heart as he seriously made notes. Then he flipped through the code book which he had replicated using divination, and he began the necessary deciphering process. Soon, he wrote a line on a note, 32 Black Pepper Avenue, 7 a.m. tomorrow. Indeed, the people in control of Helmosuin are Admiral of Blood and Company. There might be powerhouses from the Rose school of thought involved. Klein immediately made a judgment. This wasn't confirmed based on the content of the telegram, but a simple inference from the existence of the telegram itself. If Admiral of Blood and Company were uninvolved, it was unlikely for them to send and receive telegrams involving Bayham's streets. The meaning of this telegram is to gather by 32 Black Pepper Street tomorrow before 7 a.m.? Does it mean that Helmo Suin and Silver Coin Viper Odor are hiding there, and they're reporting to Admiral of Blood of their location and giving a corresponding time?
Klein thought for a moment and immediately returned above the gray fog.
With the intel he had just received, he wrote the divination statement. Turani von Helmosuin's present location. With the paper in hand, he leaned back into the chair and chanted the statement in a raving-like manner, as he entered a dream with cogitation. In the gray, hazy world, he saw an underground hall with countless gas wall lamps. Inside the hall was a massive, complicated machine. It was constructed from copper cylinders, operating levers, take-up levers, and countless gears. It took up nearly 2/3 of the space. A thin elder with grizzled, disheveled hair wore a thick coat as he paced in front of the machine. From time to time, he would pop a sweet into his mouth and munch on it noisily. No, it shouldn't be called a difference engine. It's an adorable fellow who can analyze questions and calculate the answer based on a set of procedures. Yes, its name should be a calculator, the elder kept muttering to himself as Klein's vision was pulled upwards and out the underground hall, arriving at the building above. It was a 3-story villa with a garden and lawn. Outside was its address, and it reads, 32 Black Pepper Avenue. He really is here. Klein opened his eyes as he silently exhaled. Then, he was stumped about what to do next.
A scientist like him is useless to me. Instead, it's the root of many problems. I can't just keep him above the gray fog. Therefore, there's no need for me to personally get involved and take him away. Hand over the news to the Loan military or the Church of Storms. This will effectively prevent the Rose School of Thought from obtaining any benefits. But there's a faction in the military that is likely related to the true culprit behind the Great Smog of Backland. It's not a good thing to have Helmo Suin fall into their hands. The Church of Storms is well known for being rash. A conflict might end up with the scientist meeting the deity he believes in. After some careful deliberation, he gradually had a bold idea. It was to make the news public. He would make the existence and location of Turani von Helmosuin known to the Loan Kingdom military and the churches. This could effectively ensure that the scientist's capabilities would be employed by the Loan Kingdom itself, and not any one faction. The key is balance.
Klein smiled as he muttered. He then beckoned with his hand for the sea god scepter. For the former him, he had to carefully distribute flyers across the city to make a matter public and known to all. But now, he had an even simpler and effective method. He selected a believer who happened to be praying, and then pulled his view back as the surrounding area spanning 5 kilometers entered his vision. Then, with the sea god's scepter, he wielded control of the wind. Once the wind calmed down, Klein's will sank into the scene as he changed his voice, saying with a low roar, Helmo Suin is at 32 Black Pepper Avenue. Whoosh! In Byam, the howl of the wind turned intense, as it swept in every direction, bringing with it the deep and loud voice. Helmo Suin is at 32 Black Pepper Avenue. Helmo Suin is at 32 Black Pepper Avenue. Pause. This voice soon spread across Byam like a broadcast to the entire city. Silver Coin Viper Odor was donning a cloak, pretending to be Helmo Suin. He hid himself in a crowded building in the slums, occasionally appearing to mislead MI9 and the Governor General's office's police officers. Suddenly, a gale swept past as the voice sounded in his ears. Helmo Suin is at 32 Black Pepper Avenue.
What?
As the voice resounded, Odor fell into a dazed shock. Without noticing it, he fell from the top of the roof and nearly injured himself badly. Behind the Cathedral of Waves, and in a small nearby building of the Governor General's office, John Cotman and Robert Davis heard the voice in the wind. The first reaction they had was to look up at the sky before casting their eyes towards the borough where Black Pepper Avenue was. After the broadcast and being in a good mood, Klein threw the sea god scepter back into the junk pile and returned to the real world. He wasn't in a rush to bring the radio transceiver back above the gray fog. Instead, he left it there as he continued monitoring the transmissions. This way, even if there are powerhouses from the Rose School of Thought hidden in Byam, they wouldn't dare appear.
Heh, and regardless who takes action, they'll have no choice but to hand it over to the country. Unfortunately, I don't have the habit of writing a diary like the Emperor. Otherwise, I could write something like, "I did another good deed today."
Klein silently sighed, took off his coat, got into bed, and slept. He didn't care what was going to happen next, as it had nothing to do with him. After sleeping for an unknown period of time, he suddenly woke up and sat up. Then, there was knocking on his door.
Who could it be, to knock in the middle of the night? I'm currently John Yode.
Klein wore creeping hunger and took out Death Knell from under his pillow before coming to the door. The visitor's looks quickly surfaced in his mind. It was a thin elder with grizzled, disheveled hair. He was wearing a coat stuffed with cotton and a tweed overcoat. He was popping a coffee-colored sweet into his mouth. Turani von Helmosuen.
Holy CK, why is he here looking for me? I'm just the ordinary John Yode. Also, how did he escape the tracking of a demigod?
Klein's first reaction was to tell the man that he had gotten the wrong person, but he held back and asked, "Who are you looking for?"
I noticed you when we were in the seaweed bar. However, I didn't have a chance to talk to you. Heh. My life is at its end, so I recently recalled many things. Please allow me to introduce myself. You can call me Orange Light Hilarion.
Orange Light Hilarion? Klein was taken aback before he asked in puzzlement, "Is there something?"
I'm here to warn you. Be careful of the Mother Tree of Desire. He paused for a moment before saying, "All right, I need to leave, and I'm about to die before returning to the spirit world. Do you have any enemies here?"
"Why do you ask?" Klein asked, confused.
I can silently die at their doorstep. That way you would have your revenge.
Chapter 724, The True Meaning Behind the Warning. Upon hearing Helmosuen's reply, Klein couldn't help but twitch the corner of his lips. He nearly froze on the spot.
My enemies aren't in Byam. Even if you were to die at Sea King's doorstep, it wouldn't be of much use.
He slowly drew a breath and didn't continue the topic. Instead, he asked, "Helmosuen, no, Mr. Hilarion, how did you notice me?"
You even came here before your death to specially warn me. This was also the puzzlement he had towards Arose and Raynette Tinnaker. He just never had a chance to ask them.
With the door in between them, Helmosuen fell silent for 2 seconds. Then, he said with a smile in his tone,
There are some tiny unique traits about you. In high-level creatures of the spirit world, it's no secret. It's noticeable as long as they make contact with you in close proximity. After all, the gray fog that represents the great ruler of the spirit world is above our heads. Deities with certain unique authorities or beyonders who represent fate can also discover this point to a certain extent. Of course, the premise is that close contact has to be made.
Gray fog. Although Orange Light's explanation and Rhodes's compliments are nearly identical, he is the first person I've met that directly pointed out the gray fog to me, to my face. Therefore, the mysterious space is the divine kingdom above the spirit world left behind by the great ruler? Which sequence zero pathway is this? The deities who can discover that I'm augmented by the gray fog include the Mother Tree of Desire, so she was able to target me?
Klein's thoughts bubbled like boiling water as all sorts of questions popped in his head. Just as he was about to speak, Helmosuen had continued.
In Yellow Light's prophecy, the great ruler above the spirit world is one of the variables of the apocalypse. However, I cannot be sure that you are equivalent to him. There are too many possibilities for you that allow that unique trait. For example, you being his blessed, his child, or his chosen oracle. But none of this stops me from expressing my friendship. Ahem, you know about Backland's stock exchange, right? You're like a railway company that just got listed. You seem to have a bright future ahead. Some people will naturally think well of you and purchase a certain number of shares, but there will be no lack of people who are greedy. They wish to use other means to seize this company or obtain the controlling rights. I'm part of the former, while Mother Tree of Desire and even more powerful spirit world creatures are part of the latter.
Is that so? If it wasn't because the transmigrator, Emperor Roselle, who existed before me, had some level of interaction with the gray fog, and if I hadn't divined my origins in that mysterious space and received clear scenes of Earth, allowing me to recall even more of my memories, I would have suspected if I was the reincarnation of the great ruler above the spirit world. Taking everything into account from this experience, Emperor Roselle and I are more like the chosen oracles. The great ruler above the gray fog is equivalent to the celestial worthy of heaven and earth for blessings?
Klein couldn't help but generate all kinds of conjectures as his mind was in a mess like a cat playing a ball of yarn. He calmed his emotions and said, Is there any way to hide this unique trait?
Become a demigod.
Helmasuin suddenly coughed after answering.
Do you mind if I die at your doorstep?
Yes.
Klein didn't wish to draw the attention of Sea King John Cotman, Naval Admiral Robert Davis, and other demigods.
Then, I'll have to leave immediately, or else there wouldn't be time. After you become a demigod, and have the powers to probe deep into the spirit world, we might have a chance of meeting.
Klein was silent for 2 seconds before saying, Thank you for your warning, Mr. Hilarion. Helmasuin didn't reply as he lumbered to the staircase. As he listened to the footsteps down the stairs, Klein focused. Suddenly, he had a certain theory about why Emperor Roselle had failed to enter despite discovering the existence of the gray fog. He restored that silver plate, which resulted in his transmigration far after he became a Beyonder. As for me, I was already an ordinary person when I attempted the luck enhancement ritual again. Also, Emperor Roselle chose the Savant pathway, while I took the Seer pathway. The mysterious space above the gray fog clearly provides great aid in divination. Therefore, the prerequisites for entering the space above the gray fog is to be an ordinary person or be a Beyonder of the Seer pathway, as well as knowing of the corresponding incantation, rituals, and symbols. The Emperor's experiments were too late, and he had chosen the wrong pathway, so he naturally had no means of entering it. With how the Seer, Apprentice, and Marauder pathways are considered neighboring pathways, perhaps the former two would work too. Could this be the deeper reason why the Emperor made the poignant point in his diary that he should have chosen one of these 3 pathways? Apart from not having any sequence 0 for these 3 pathways, preventing any influence from the peak, it's also the key to entering the gray fog?
As his thoughts churned, Klein placed this matter, which he couldn't obtain any confirmation of, at the back of his mind. He began considering Orange Light Hilarion's warning. Be careful of the Mother Tree of Desire.
Due to the incident as Admiral Emerius, Klein was rather wary against the Mother Tree of Desire. He had no choice but to change his identity and use the need for him to act, so as to hide for 2 months. Subsequently, he wasn't too willing to provoke Admiral of Blood and other members of the Rose School of Thought, afraid that he would fall into a trap. Towards the extreme danger lurking around, a normal human's first thought was to resolve the matter. It was likewise the same for Klein. However, the problem was that he had no solutions. The Mother Tree of Desire was suspected to be a Sequence 0 true god located in the astral world. Even if Klein jumped up, there was no way he could hit her or defeat her. And the faction, the Rose School of Thought, that she controlled, was an organization with quite a long history. It likely had angels presiding over it and had Grade 0 sealed artifacts. Otherwise, it was very difficult for them to survive to this day, with the churches and all the secret organizations at odds with it. Therefore, even if Klein had plans of getting the help of Mr. Azek or other powerful figures, there was no way he could uproot the Rose School of Thought. It was even possible that they would encounter danger. Due to these reasons, Klein could only hide and hope that he could successfully advance to Sequence 4 and become a demigod.
I've always been careful against the Mother Tree of Desire. Mr. Orange Light Hilarion didn't know that I once fell for the evil god's trap at Oravi Island? Or did he specially come over to warn me that she would be doing something major soon? He was previously under Admiral of Blood's control, and Admiral of Blood is a member of the Rose School of Thought. He might very well know of something.
Klein was instantly alarmed. He didn't just blindly believe that a faceless transformation was enough to fool the Mother Tree of Desire's attention. According to Orange Light Hilarian's explanation, she would be able to discover certain unique traits when in close proximity with me. This is something the faceless Beyonder powers are unable to mask. She hasn't done anything in a while? Could it be that she is attempting to use this sensation to bestow something to her believers through some ritual or item, and that she is about to succeed soon? Klein slowly frowned as he felt that it was certainly a possibility. This made him more eager to return to Backland. In that huge city, even angels had to behave themselves, just like a particular snake of fate. The believers of the Mother Tree of Desire and the powerhouses of the Rose School of Thought were unable to act as they wished. All they could do was wait for an opportunity. Phew! Klein exhaled and headed above the gray fog. He divined if his life would be in danger soon. This time, he received a negative answer. His life wouldn't be in danger. However, Klein didn't relax as a result. He recalled that the Mother Tree of Desire's divination interference could penetrate the gray fog shielding to a certain extent. And very long ago, his spirituality had prevented him from divining the werewolf Beyonder characteristic above the gray fog. This was because it might very well involve the chained god, and the chained god was suspected to be another manifestation of the Mother Tree of Desire.
Either there's really nothing going on and that I'm overthinking matters, or the danger is already very close. That's why the Mother Tree of Desire took action to interfere. To be safe, I need to make preparations. Even if it's proven to be a false alarm, it's still better than being captured by the Rose School of Thought and taken away by the Mother Tree of Desire to perform some unspeakable matters.
Klein immediately returned to the real world and took out a pen and paper before quickly writing a letter. He started with, "Wed, dear Mr. Azek, considering how the underworld was inside the spirit world, that the demigods of the death pathway were considered high-ranking spirit world creatures in a certain way, and that Mr. Azek might be able to see his unique trait after he recovered his memory." Klein was rather honest. He directly wrote about the entire conversation between Orange Light Hilarian's manifestation, Helmusuan the scientist. The only thing he left out was about the gray fog and the parts about the great existence above the gray fog. Finally, he mentioned something. "Does Mr. Hilarian's warning imply that I'll suffer mortal danger from the Rose School of Thought?" After he folded the letter and blew the copper whistle to summon the messenger, Klein still didn't find it safe enough. He hurriedly took out the adventurer's harmonica and blew into it. Silently, Renette Tinnecker appeared before him. Each of the four heads with blonde hair and red eyes rotated and said,
There's no letter.
"I have something to discuss with you." Klein forced a big smile. He handed over the gold coin he received from Anderson and said, "Nacha-san, shati stufaked. This is the fee for the summoning. Mai kachi Mai." One of the heads, Renette Tinnecker, held bit onto the gold coin. The two other heads that didn't get the chance to speak asked,
What is it?
"I might face a certain degree of danger soon. I wonder if it's possible to summon you for help." Klein tried his best to make his eyes look sincere. The 8 eyes on Renette Tinnecker's forehead darted around as they said,
Yes, pay 10,000 gold coins.
10,000 gold coins! That's 10,000 pounds! Klein turned agape as he said with a wry smile, I don't have that much money."
You can pay by installments.
Installments. Klein was surprised that his messenger kept with the times. After 2 seconds of shock, he said, "All right." Renette Tinnecker didn't say anything else as her foreheads nodded simultaneously before disappearing in front of Klein and returning to the spirit world. Chapter 725, Morning. Upon seeing the messenger disappear, Klein thought of the demigods he could contact on short notice, but he realized that there weren't any. All he could do was turn his attention onto what he should do next. The city-wide broadcast must have made Sea King John Cotman not only find Helmusuan, but he would also do his best to search for Sea God and the traces of his believers.
It's easy to be detected if I leave in the middle of the night, so I can only choose to stay here until daybreak. I can't take that ship tomorrow. If I encounter an attack midway, I might affect everyone on the ship. Furthermore, it's not discreet enough. I can summon an undersea creature and leave by riding it. I can rest and switch rides on the deserted islands and reefs we encounter along the way until I arrive at the next port. Since Orange Light said that the unique trait can only be detected at close distances, it still won't exceed the size of a city, even if the Mother Tree of Desire tries to expand her perception range to find me via a ritual or her believers. It might even be limited to the size of a particular street. This is also why I encountered a trap when I arrived in Oravi. As long as I leave Byam, I should be able to escape from their gaze.
While Klein's thoughts gradually turned clear, he suddenly heard a signal from the radio transceiver. He hurriedly went over and quickly jotted it down. Then, with the codebook, he transcribed the corresponding words into a single sentence. Before long, the telegram's content appeared on paper in jet black. "I see you."
I see you.
When Klein read those words, he felt a chill run through his heart. Pause. Byam, in an ordinary residence not far from the Governor General's office. In a spacious basement, there were candles silently burning, scattering their dim glow around the surroundings. Silver Coin Viper Odor had already taken off his hooded robe. He looked at the middle-aged man opposite him as he trembled.
Lord Senor, I don't know how Helmasuin's real hiding place was known by others as well.
Senor wore an old triangular hat. His eye sockets were recessed, and his face was shockingly pale. He looked more like an evil spirit than a human. He raised his hand to stroke the two black mustaches above his lips as his light brown eyes coldly swept across Odor's face. In response, the well-known adventurer couldn't help but lower his head. After observing him for a few seconds, Admiral of Blood, in his white trousers and red coat, said with a deep voice,
Less than 3 minutes after that telegram was sent, it was spread across the entire city. And the message spread was part of the telegram. I suspect that another faction has begun paying notice to radio transmissions, and they had obtained our codebook from Old Quinn.
Yes, it has to be the case.
Odor hurriedly echoed, hoping that Admiral of Blood wouldn't pin the loss of Helmasuin as him being inept. He knew very well that this pirate admiral was cruel to subordinates who made mistakes. Senor swept his gaze at Odor and sneered.
Regardless, you failed. If not for you and your mistress giving me plenty of joy, I would have gotten you to dig out your intestines. Send a telegram. Tell that listener, who might or might not exist, that I can see him. Let him spend the night in horror and unease. This is the only thing you need to do now.
Yes, Lord Senor.
Upon hearing that, Odor immediately heaved a sigh of relief. He glanced at Admiral of Blood in trepidation and the bloody altar behind him before reverently replying. He felt that he would have become part of the sacrificial items just moments ago. After Odor retreated out of the basement, Senor turned his head to look at the altar covered with human heads, organs, limbs, and blood.
Lord Shanks, has the ritual succeeded?
A cold, unfeeling voice sounded from the drooping curtains around the altar. Then, the curtains seemed to possess life as they rolled up on both sides, smoothly forming a knot before landing in the middle of the altar. A somewhat translucent figure appeared by the side of the altar at some point in time. His skin was slightly brown, and his wrinkles formed deep crevices. His white, thinned hair was like leaves in autumn, as though they had lived for many, many years. He humbly fixated his gaze at the candlelight with his brown eyes. Senor didn't dare say a word as he stood beside Lord Shanks, awaiting for any changes to happen to the altar. Suddenly, the candle's flame was dyed with all kinds of colors. Each color seemed to correspond to the different desires of an observer. The heads, organs, limbs, and blood on the altar moved by themselves as they stacked up together, forming the state of a melted candle. Before long, they formed a tree of flesh and blood that wasn't too tall. Its surface was uneven, resembling the shell of a walnut. Plop! 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 The interior of the tree of flesh and blood seemed to have a heart, beating forcefully with strength. When Senor was about to succumb to the din, The tree of flesh and blood instantly withered, rotting into slosh and collapsing. There was a tiny, flesh-colored, moist, sticky ball left behind. Soon, the tiny ball grew 4 limbs and a head, turning into a palm-sized humanoid creature. Its face didn't have any eyes, nose, or ears, other than a pinhole-like mouth. In its mouth, grayish-white fog spewed out before converging back in. It repeated several times without stopping. The elder named Shanks devoutly and passionately chanted the name Mother Tree of Desire and reached out to grab the strange, tiny figure. Silently, all the candlelights were extinguished, but to a wraith who had night vision, this didn't affect them from seeing things. Senor observed Shanks and heard this important person say in a deep voice,
"We've prepared for a long time for this ritual, and God's grace can help us sense the existence of the target through a wider range. Next, we can use the glasses made by the Life School of Thought to accurately locate him."
As he spoke, Shanks took out a monocle from his inner pocket. It didn't look any different from a normal monocle, but it coruscated with a pearly white luster in the darkness.
Lord Shanks, what should we do next?
Seek out the target after daybreak. If he has powerful helpers, we will monitor him and prevent him from leaving our detection range. Then, patiently await Lord Sua's arrival. If he doesn't have any guardians and is weak himself, then we shall take action directly.
After hearing the word Sua, the corners of Senor's forehead twitched as though just the mere mention of this important figure left him apprehensive. He slowly took a deep breath and said,
Yes, Lord Shanks.
After answering, Senor instinctively touched the necklace by his chest. The necklace seemed to be made of pure silver, and the pendant looked like an ancient coin. Klein, who didn't get much sleep for the rest of the night due to the fright from receiving the telegram, immediately sacrificed his suitcase, wallet, and most of his cash to the mysterious space above the gray fog at daybreak. After clearing up his tracks, he went to the front desk to check out. He rode a carriage to the borders of Byam, left the city, and climbed the mountain as though he was heading for a cemetery prepared for locals. Midway through his journey, he suddenly took a detour into the woods and planned on walking straight to the cliffs, where a massive undersea creature was waiting underneath for him. The birds chirped and the insects buzzed in the woods as critters would occasionally scuttle by. Klein walked through the humic material-covered grounds at high speed. Along the way, he saw mushrooms growing after the rain, torn cloth, and rubbish which the Bayham residences had left behind after a picnic. Everything seemed so serene alongside the fresh morning air. A leaf fluttered down as Klein didn't stop and easily dodged it. At that moment, the leaf's speed sped up and did a surprising bend, clinging to him in between his lips and nose. It was like an adult's palm that clasped his mouth and nose tightly, making it impossible for him to breathe. Sue, sue, sue. The surrounding trees had their branches fall off as they shot at Klein like sharp arrows, and the rubbish left from the picnic received a life of their own. They formed an airtight net as they came looming over.